Winter. The holidays, the new year, the ideal circumstances to crush your enemies. Oh, wait a second. Turns out that some of the most gorgeous snowy vacation destinations have shadowy past. Next time you're out in the snow, just remember that you may be trotting on a great battleground that was once colored with red. 3 snowy battlefields for winter vacations. Lapland. It's every child's dream to go and visit Santa in his hometown, feed the reindeer and play in the snow of the winter wonderland that is Lapland. But the snow, sparkling aurora borealis lights, and Christmas spirit hide a dark secret that less than 100 years ago, Lapland was less a site of elves and candy canes and more a frozen, bloody battlefield of the Winter War.
A new dawn is breaking. I do not fear death, nor do I fear the city of champions, for I will destroy them all. Ah! Oh!
Get ready to raid in the free-to-play PvE and PvP mobile game, where you can take on other players in battle, face off against legendary bosses, and discover new strategies and ways to play as the ultimate fighting team. With over 650 champions to collect, you can upgrade their skills to best suit your team and fighting style. You have the opportunity to collect a brand new legendary champion based on the one-of-a-kind MMA and pro wrestling champ Ronda Rousey. You can add Ronda to your roster of rogues and legends for free by logging into Raid and playing on 7 different days between now and February 28th. Plus, if you have an Amazon Prime subscription, you can get even more exclusive rewards in Raid right now. As watchers of Simple History, you get a free starter pack worth almost $30, the free champion purchase, and this super cool in-game loot. You will find your rewards here in your inbox for the next 30 days only. Just click the link below or scan the QR code on screen now and get ready to raid. It was 1939, and the Second World War had already begun and was rampaging across Central Europe. Sitting quietly to the north, Finland was unwilling to involve its small army against the huge military might of countries like Germany. But unfortunately, their claims of neutrality weren't enough to soothe the fears of the Soviet Union, who saw the potential for Germany to use Finland as a base for attacks against them. So on November 30th, 1939, mere months after World War II began, the Soviet Union attacked Finland with no formal declaration of war. The hostilities lasted 105 days. It began when the Soviet 104th Division landed on the Rybachi Peninsula, heading straight for Lapland and Petsamo. They quickly took over the Arctic port before slowly beginning to trudge their way through the snow and ice of the empty, frozen Arctic highway of Lapland. One of their main objectives was to make it to the city of Salla, a strategic target that would allow them to funnel supplies from Petsamo through the rest of Finland. The Finnish army was well equipped to handle winter warfare, even more so than the Soviet Red Army. However, they were tiny and needed support from the Allies, support that sadly never came. Despite that, when the Soviets landed on Finnish shores, they put up a good fight, setting up a defensive blockade while they appealed for aid. But despite their hopes of Allied troops, they admittedly knew the chances of help were slim. Any military support would have to cut a pathway through Sweden and Norway, 2 other Scandinavian countries that had declared neutrality in World War II. Finland was under siege and starting to crumble. In the town of Suma, the Finnish forces were retreating after putting up a heavy fight, and elsewhere, forces were dwindling. On February 14th, Sweden firmly told Finnish Foreign Minister Väinö Tainer that they would not give any aid, nor let any Allied troops through Sweden. Historian William Trotter theorized that the reasons were purely cold-blooded. Finland would be forced to agree a peace deal with the Russians, creating a safety net between Sweden and the Soviets. Finland was stuck between a rock and a hard place, and realizing no one was willing to help, had no choice but to enter into peace talks with the Soviets. When the Allies realized that Finland was about to cede to the Soviet Union, panic set in. The French sent cables promising troops that could never reach Finland, and Britain quietly considered the same. The Finnish knew these promises for what they were, though, and realized they were still in a position where they had no choice but to listen to Soviet demands. And the price was high. The Finnish were to sign a mutual assistance pact with the USSR and cede both of all of the Karelian Isthmus to the Soviets, and the town of Hanko to be made a Russian base for 30 years. With nowhere else to turn, on March 12th, the Finns miserably agreed to the Soviet terms. The ceasefire began at noon the next day. So next time you visit Santa, just remember something far more sinister than reindeer-drawn sleighs once traversed the icy landscapes of Lapland. The Battle of Stalingrad. While Russia might not be top of anyone's holiday destination list right now for obvious reasons, it is a beautiful place to visit with stunning architecture and gorgeous landscapes. And one of its flagship cities, Volgograd, is a place where tourists can experience culture, fine dining, and of course, a piece of bloody history. One of the bloodiest pieces ever, in fact. Atop a hill overlooking the city is a constant reminder, a 279-foot striking statue named The Motherland Calls, a monument of a woman stepping forward into battle, sword held aloft. A dominating piece of art and a memorial to those who died there during World War II, because back then, the city was known by another name, Stalingrad. Over the course of World War II, the USSR saw more losses than any other nation, with nearly half of all dead being Soviet citizens. The Battle of Stalingrad is infamous for the countless number of dead and the bloodiness and hand-to-hand nature of the battle itself. Some predictions, like those of historian Jeffrey Roberts, suggest 1.5 million were dead within 6 months of the invasion of the Eastern Front. In Russian historiography, the standoff between the Red Army and the German Wehrmacht began on the 17th of July, 1942, launching the now called 200 Days of Fire, when the Luftwaffe and Army bombarded the city relentlessly. After past failures, Hitler wanted to launch another attack on the USSR. He may not have even expected to win, but he did expect to deal a big blow to the Red Army and hopefully capture Stalingrad, a place of particular strategic importance to Hitler and psychologically impactful to the Soviets if taken. If Hitler was successful, he could have occupied key points of the Don River's western banks, crafting defensive land bridges. Plus, Stalingrad was a big industrial center, and he could have blockaded the flow of oil to northern Russia. But after a brutal and bloody short battle with mass casualties on either side, the tides began to turn on the Germans. Eventually, the Soviets were able to trap German forces by surrounding them with their own, and as the weather got colder, the successes of the Luftwaffe dwindled, while the Red Army grew in strength. Casualties mounted, but the counterattack was successful, and on January 31st, 1943, most German forces surrendered to the Soviets, with the others following a few days later. Stalingrad was free, but still snowy. Katsurayama Castle. Far away from the wintry cold fronts of World War II, both in distance and time, there were many other battles at snowy locales, the winter being both an unnatural backdrop to war and a chilling obstacle for troops. The same is true as far back as the 1500s, when in Japan, warring clans fought for domination and their rightful claim to the land. One of the most famous of these was a series of small fights between the Takeda and Uesugi clans, now known as the Battles of Kawa-Nakajima. From 1553 to 1564, the two clans fought for dominance in north-central Japan. The heads of the two clans, Takeda Shingen and Uesugi Kenshin, were province princes and each held the command of thousands of almost fanatically loyal samurai. According to Peter Turnbull, leading historian on Japanese military history and the samurai, Takeda Shingen is now seen as the finest leader of mounted samurai in Sengoku, Japan. The Third Battle of Kawanakajima took place at Katsurayama, a siege castle built 4 years earlier in 1553 by Yue Sugi Kenshin. If successfully captured by the Takeda clan, it would provide a high-level route to Echigo, but high up as it was, the winter snows had trapped the Yue Sugi clan inside the castle walls, both hindering them and helping the Takeda launch a 6,000-strong attack from the snow. While accounts vary on the actual nature of the battle and victory, Turnbull assures us one thing is for certain: many Japanese samurai died defending the castle, fiercely protecting it against the Takeda until they were physically unable to do so any longer. Katsurayama Castle no longer stands, but the Shinano province where it once stood, now known as Nagano Prefecture, is lauded for its hot springs and mountain resorts that keep it isolated from the hustle and bustle of busy Japanese life.